Okay, so here is my attempt at making a video of how to make the chicken pot pie. I know I can make the pot pie, so that's not a problem. So let's go over our ingredients. So we have our recipe, and so it calls for 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. There it is in the skillet melting down. Then 1 pound of boneless chicken breast. Now I've doubled this recipe, so I'm going to give you the single recipe as I say it, but you'll see double the ingredients. So there's my chicken breast cut up. Then I have my carrots, my celery, my onions. I have garlic, granulated garlic, black pepper, freshly chopped parsley, chicken broth. Okay, now we need our heavy cream. There's our heavy cream. And I need thyme leaves. So if you look in here, you can see I have all my different seasonings, the smaller ones. So thyme, ground thyme leaves. So you look at my recipe and it calls for dried thyme leaves. We have thyme leaves, dried. Okay, so first thing we gotta do is you make sure the oven rack is on the bottom. There it is. We preheated the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. You can do the conversion for Celsius, and the Celsius conversion is 218 degrees Celsius. All right, so we add the butter, large pillow, we got that to a large skillet, we got that going. Once the butter is melted, then we add the chicken. So we're almost there. I like to use a rubber spatula here to do this part. I'm going to add the chicken. It's going to foam up a little bit, start screaming because it's burning. Listen to the chicken cry. All right, just kidding. I'm going to move this to the sink because we work in a clean area. All right, move the chicken around, let it start cooking. Now, move the chicken around. Try and get the surface area of the skillet covered. It's spinning nicely. All right. And next we're going to add the carrots. Here's our carrots. And that's 2 cups. Remember, I'm doubling this recipe. You're going to put 1 cup. Half a cup of celery, so 1 cup of celery in my case. And then we're going to do 1/2 cup of chopped onions, which is actually 1 cup of chopped onions. That looks really good. And celery, onions. Now I'm going to put salt. All right, so I'm going to pause and do all that, and I'll come back. Okay, so I put in the, let's see, the salt, the garlic powder, the dried thyme leaves, the black pepper. And this has to cook for 8 to 10 minutes. So put the timer on 10 minutes. And I'll be back. So I've mixed this up pretty well. I'm gonna let this cook. Still got another 8 minutes or so. Once it cooks up, I'm gonna add the flour, and I'm gonna mix that until it appears to be dry. You'll see that, and that's when we'll then add the cream and the broth, and then let that cook up, and the last thing we add are the peas. Okay, we got about 6 more minutes to go, and as you can see, it's really getting very liquidy because all of the vegetables are giving up that liquid that's in them. Chicken's doing the same thing. We're just stirring to make sure that the chicken cooks evenly. You'll see some pieces that are less done than others. Here's a good example right here. Flip that over, let it hit the heat, and we'll come back to this. Okay, with 4 minutes left into this, you can see how much moisture there is in this. Chicken's cooking nicely. The carrots are starting to get really soft, which is what you want. Celery's cooking. You can see the seasonings in there mixed around. Okay, we're going to come back in a couple minutes. Okay, here we go. I wish you could smell. I wish you had smell-o-vision here. You could smell how good this is. Where are we in the process? We're about 3 minutes out from this piece. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our heavy cream. I'm sorry, next we're going to put the flour first. And then this is going to become really kind of dry because the flour is going to suck up all that moisture. And then we're going to put the heavy cream and then the chicken broth. And we're going to cook that until it's bubbling and thick. And we're going to stir it. And that's just about 3 to 4 minutes. And remove everything from the heat. Stir in the peas and the flat parsley. So the parsley's here. The peas are here, frozen. So we're almost ready, believe it or not, to finish this recipe, this part. And over on the table, I have my doughs ready. They're coming to room temperature because they were in the fridge. And then I'm going to put them into the pie crust. And when this is all ready, I'll put that into the pie, throw it in the oven, and we'll get there. So stay tuned. That's a better view. I think you can see more of what's going on. Be right back. Okay, we're at the spot where we're going to add the flour. So you can see the flour over there waiting to be added. Put this over here. I'm going to start with the first. Again, I'm doubling the recipe. This is going to be a half a cup of flour. You're going to use a quarter cup. That's in there. Now I'm going to stir that up so that it's all mixed in. Be right back. Okay, here's what it looks like when it's got all of the flour. You shouldn't see any white. Flour should be gone. And now we're going to put in the heavy cream and mix that. So you can see the heavy cream, I'm mixing that in. You want to get that mixed well. And it's on a hot stove. I'm happening to use an electric stove, so you got to watch the temperature here. You don't want to scorch anything too much. And you get stuff sticking to the bottom. So I don't want to mix this in, then I'm going to add the broth. Okay, so I've added the broth, and as you can see, it's very liquidy now, but what's going to happen is it's going to cook for about 4 minutes now, and this is going to thicken up. And don't worry about making a mess on the stove like I am, because I will clean it up, and so will you. Or your roommates will kill you. But you can see it's starting to thicken now. I'm going to set the timer now for about 3 more minutes. And we're going to let that cook, and I'll be back. Okay, you can see it's bubbling now. It's cooking. Now this is going to cook for about another 2 minutes. And then, see it's bubbling. If I let this go, you'll see the bubbles. We'll let this bubble, but we'll keep an eye on it and keep moving so nothing burns to the bottom. And I'm mixing it around to try and get the fluid to thicken, mixed with the flour. And it's thickening nice. And then the next step is we move it off of the heat. We add the peas and the parsley. And once they're added, we stir them in. And then we let this sit for about 30 minutes. And then we make the pie crust in the containers. So then when 30 minutes is up, we'll do the pie. Now I'm doing 1 pie, but I made ingredients enough for 2. So I'm gonna let it cool down to room temperature and put half of it into a freezer bag and freeze it. And then one night when I need it, I'll thaw it out, put it into a pie shell, and I'll have a homemade chicken pot pie that I didn't have to do this work for, but it's not that much work. Back in about a minute, I'll be back. Okay, so I think it got thick enough. I've moved it over to the cooler side of the oven. And anybody who has an electric stove knows that this side is not going to cool fast. So it's good to have an empty, cool space. I don't know what kind of oven you're using. We're going to put the parsley in. This is fresh cut parsley. And I minced it up. The flavor is amazing. The smell is amazing. The flavor will be amazing. We're going to mix this up. Be right back. Okay, so the parsley's in there now. As you can see, I'm going to put frozen peas. Reason for frozen peas, if they were fresh peas, they'd be all mushy by the time this was ready. Frozen peas will help the peas hold their shape and consistency. All right, I'm going to pop them in and you'll see them in a minute. Okay, the peas are in. I went a little overboard. I'm going to mix them in. Put a little bit too many peas, but that's okay. I think you can't have enough peas, personally. So let me move this around, mix it up, and I'll show you when it's done. Okay, sports fans, or should I say pot pie fans, there's your insides. There's the the filling for the pie. It's all done. It's just going to sit here for 30 minutes. While it's doing that, I'm going to prep the pie pan and get it ready to go in the oven. Okay, so here's my non-stick pie pan. I use these all the time. I love these things. Spend a little extra money, get non-stick. That's all I can tell you. And don't let anybody else wash them. You hand wash them. Don't let anybody put silverware in them. Use plastic utensils or wood. And these things are amazing and they'll last you a long time. So I'm going to go put there's the pie dough. I'm going to put it in here and I'll show you what that looks like. So here's a pie dough open. It's kind of got a good thick consistency. And what I'm going to do is form it to the inside of this shell and I'll be back and show you what that looks like. Okay, so it's almost like using Play-Doh when you get it to the right consistency. This pie dough is still a little cold, but that's okay. So there's my bottom. And and I fold a little bit over to the top because when I put the top piece on, I'm going to pinch it together to seal it. And then I have my little utility knife, which I love. And it just does a nice job of putting the little slits in the top of the pie. And when I cut the excess dough around the top, you'll see that. Okay, so now it's time to fill the pie crust. Come over to our filling, which is cooled. Oven's still a little hot because I'm going to put something in it. So we're just going to take this ladle and I'm going to ladle this into here, fill it, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I'm going to put this on that and be right back. Okay, so here's the pie. Put the crust in, and I'm basically just pinching it so that the inside stay inside when it cooks. I'm going to put a little hole here, and I'm going to do this. And when it cooks, steam will come out and it won't blow up the pie. Now it goes in the oven. So we'll walk over to the oven. Goes on the bottom rack. Open the oven more so I don't burn my fingers. In it goes. Just gotta look and see how long. So goes in the oven 30 minutes. Set the timer. This is the extra that I made. I already put it in the bag. It's going to go in the freezer and I will have pot pie filling for next time. I'll be back when the pie is done. Well, it looks like the top split a little bit, but it's done. So we're going to pull it out and put it on the stove. And we're going to let it cool. And I know the stove's supposed to take heat, but I want to put it on top of something because it makes me paranoid. There it is. Now this has to cool for about 30 minutes before you eat it because it's hot inside. So timer 3000 start. We'll let that cool and I'll show you what a piece looks like cut before I eat it. Yum. Okay, here's a finished piece. Yum.